Hey guys, thanks for joining us on the Captain's Collective. On today's episode, Austin Reinhardt and I sit down with John Swanson and hear about how he went from serving in the United States Marines to guiding out of Marinas. John is a guide in the Big Bend area of North Florida near St. Mark's, and he also does some work in marine electronics. In this episode, he shares with us some insights as a guide, carryovers from his time in service, and a few good stories, including a rather interesting way of using butt caps on your rods. We hope that you enjoy. Thank you for listening. This is the Captain's Collective.
Success is a gift. Excellence is the only thing to strive for.
Out in front of those,
he
right?
tried to eat it. He tried to eat it. Hit him.
You got him. He's on it.
2 butt caps off the rods, filled them with tequila. We took a shot and out we went.
There ain't no getting into it after that. You're hooked. It's a bad habit.
And all the time Flips, he's standing there ready to go for a tarpon. And he turned around, he says, "You talk so much, you're like a senator."
He's out there. All right, we're going to take up the line.
All right. Hey, John, thanks for being on with us. Some better circumstances with pizza and beer than the last time we saw you 20 feet behind the boat, tied up, getting towed into the ramp. So thanks for hanging out, man. Just start, what did you have going on today?
Woke up early, normal routine, got down to the shop where I do the electric work, and was there for 9.5 hours, pulling wires, cutting holes in fiberglass. Normal day, really.
So you're working with marine electronics, right?
Yeah. I do either anything from a GPS install to a complete rewire of the boat. Like the one today, he brought it to me with the motors were on the back of it, and he had just put a new fuel tank, and the fiberglass was redone. Other than that, it didn't have a single wire in the boat.
Clean slate.
Clean slate. So start from scratch, pull all new wires, rig the motors.
You got to prefer that though over some chicken wire nest of a rat's nest under a
I watched a
console.
YouTube video, did it myself. Thought maybe you could touch this up for me.
My favorite's the 16 rolls of electrical tape holding everything together,
Yep.
including the wires, no butt splices, no way to connect them, just taped together.
Yeah, that's like my house. Like, I swear the person that owned the house before me was like a YouTube electrician, and he was like doing all this crap in the house. And I started like taking off sockets and stuff, and I was like, what in the world was this guy doing? But that's interesting and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but just kind of some of the marine electronics and getting into your guiding, but also that kind of work. But could you just kind of share with us your story about how, where you grew up and your time in the military, and then how you got into marine electronics and guiding?
I was born, raised here in Crawfordville, graduated high school. My grandparents and parents had paid for the Florida prepaid, so they begged me to go to college. But I think since I was probably about 11, maybe 12, I was going to be in the military. Both my grandpas were in the military. One was a Marine, one was in the Navy. Yeah, one was in the Army too. So then started off high school, good grades. Wanted to go to Annapolis, be a fighter pilot. Yeah, fly jets, look cool glasses.
Top Gun,
yeah. And I think I'd say the beginning of my junior year, I figured out what girls and beer and skipping school to go fishing and stuff like that, it kind of affects your grades a little bit. So
Change of plans.
Yeah, no longer wanted to do the pilot thing. But 9/11 happened, and that kind of changed a little bit of my goals on where I wanted to go. So they taught me to do a year of college up in Tallahassee. Was enrolled for 2 semesters. Grades weren't real great, but joined the Marines. Did a couple weeks short of 4 years with them. Got out in a couple odd jobs. Owned a glass company for a year or so. Worked down at St. Mark's Powder for the last 5 years until about, I guess it was this last April. I finally took that leap and went full time.
And really, when you're working 5 years, the powder shop, and you decide, man, I love fishing. You said you kind of really got into it in 11th grade, really started going all in on it.
We, I got pictures of me, my dad, and my grandpa down at Mexico Beach when I was 4, catching pinfish off the dock, and I thought I was a king. I'd catch all these pinfish, and Dad would throw them in a bucket and tell me how good I was doing. And I just remember looking back and always realizing my bucket was never getting full of pinfish. They kept disappearing. Dad was using them for bait and selling them to the guys on the pier for, a quarter a piece and making beer money with them.
Hey, man, you can't blame him. Don't
No.
knock the hustle.
No, he was doing good. So I did, I guess it was about 8 years ago now. I came back from the military, was living in Tallahassee, and I started getting more and more back into the inshore fishing, getting out on the water. And with transitioning out of the military and stuff like that, I realized fishing was my chi. That was my happy place. So I started a nonprofit. I started taking other veterans and military guys fishing for free. It was a nonprofit we ran. And that kind of led me more into the guiding aspect of things, because I started realizing I get probably more enjoyment out of taking someone and putting them on a fish that if I wasn't showing them and helping them, they might not be able to do on their own. And that's started doing the guiding. So I've been guiding with that aspect for 8 years, and then as a, I guess, regular charter for about 5 now, part-time while working at the gunpowder plant and building it up.
What was that moment like where you just decided, did something happen that just triggered you into wanting to take that leap, or was there something that was significant there, or did you just kind of get to the point where you said, I don't really like my job that much, I'm just going to go for it now or never?
I've always wanted to, it's obviously it's quote unquote the dream job, but with having a daughter and bills and responsibilities, it was always, our area doesn't have the market, say, of Mosquito Lagoon or the Keys. The tourism's not quite as extreme here. So thinking about how to make it where I can actually run enough charters per year to live and be comfortable, never going to get rich doing it, but can't beat being on the water, It's a good way to make a living a day.
So you just kind of ran the math a little bit and said, screw it, I'm going to go do it. And
yeah, well, been there for, and trying to go too detailed with it, but was there for 5 years, and I always got in trouble for using my vacation. After about a year at the plant, I got moved to research and development, and we were supposed to have 80 hours of vacation, 40 as sick, 40 a personal. So I basically had 160 hours I could take off, which a lot of it I did for fishing. At your 5-year mark, you're supposed to get an extra week of vacation. Well, they changed the vacation personal time, whatever the hell it's called, protocol. Well, I got bumped back to 80 hours for my 5th year instead of going up to 120 plus my 40 and 40. And I realized my fishing time literally got cut in half. Well, fishing while I was getting paid, vacation time got cut in half.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I realized between that and my electric business was picking up, and I was like, okay, there was days I'd go to work at the plant from 6 to 2, get off, do a charter from 3 to 7, and then do wiring on a boat from 8 till 12 or 1, and had to be back at the gunpowder plant at 5:30.
Did you have your nonprofit running before you went out and started guiding, or was that something that started later?
It was before. I started doing that. I did it for a little bit over 2, maybe 3 years. It was just completely self-funded. If I was going fishing, I would just bring a veteran with me. If someone called me and said, hey, look, I'm getting ready to deploy or just got back, like, let's go fishing. And it was just something I did. And I posted pictures, and we got some like K2 coolers, and some of the other guys, they sent us some product to use, and it was really good. And then met a couple people, guy Dale Bessie, he worked for iHeartMedia. He became the vice president, and he's a marketing guru genius guy. And he really pushed me to get the 501c3 and actually do fundraisers. And not this last winter, but the 2 before that, we ran a redfish tournament in November, the Redfish Challenge, and that's where we got a lot of our funding. But the guiding, I would say, kind of came from that, because people started seeing, hey, you're doing all this basically guiding, but I'm not a veteran. How can I go with you? So I was like, okay, well, went and got my captain's license, got all set up, and it cost a good couple dollars. The next thing you know, I was like, all right, well, I ran 5 paying charters this year. And then the next year I'd run, 60, 65 Fish for Brave charters. I never took tips, never got paid for anything. You put the gas in the boat, and that was it. And then that year I ran 20 paying charters. And it kind of started building up and getting my own clients and kind of getting the name out, and got to the point, like I said, between doing the Fishing for the Brave nonprofit trips, actual paying charters, being a father, having a full-time job, and then I started doing the marine electrical also. It was just, like I said, that April that was it. I was like, I had way too many irons in the fire.
So, just to sort of paint the picture for those that are listening and don't really know where you're fishing out of and what you're fishing for,
I can't tell you all that.
not your spots. We're not asking your spots, but just sort of paint the picture of the Panhandle area and what sort of species is your bread and butter.
Year round we do redfish, trout. They're, St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge is undisturbed. We have I think it's the second largest continuous grass flat in the world. The other one's in Australia. So Appalachian Bay from Steenhatchee all the way up, all that is just natural grass flat. So we got this pristine area. There's no skyscrapers. There's no buildings. There's days we go fishing and you won't see another boat. You might see two, if you go through the week. So we got this, the continuous grass flat, and then there's no buildings. You don't run into a lot of boat traffic. It's not a very pressured fishery, but year-round's trout and redfish, summertime's tarpon time, and then wintertime there's certain areas you can go to in our area that get the big bull reds, and the smallest one you'll usually catch in that area is about 33, 34 inches, and we've called them up to 47, and that's on light spinning tackle or fly rod. So I would say every month of the year there's something you can come down here and do, no matter what the weather is.
Yeah, and it's such a different area to fish than what I'm used to. I'm from the east coast of Florida, so it's mangrove fishing. There's not a whole lot of oysters, so I came up here and just the wildlife alone is incredible. It's pretty incredible fishery, incredible bottom here. We got a lot of off run of Lake Okeechobee, so the bottom's not as great over there as it is here. So definitely understand how beautiful the St. Mark's area is.
John, can you tell us too a little bit about some of the things that you carried with you from your time in the military to fishing, and maybe some of the lessons you learned or habits or just things that you picked up translated over?
I would think one of the biggest aspects would be the actual self-discipline. There's days where if I'm going to meet a client at the ramp at 6, I have to be up at 4. And you sleep in, you lose that client, you lose that day. So self-discipline, I think I had it before the military, but organization, a little OCD, that always helps out a little bit. So, but mostly just the discipline, hard work. There's days where it sucks. There's days where you go out there and the fish aren't cooperating, the weather's not cooperating. I had a client throw a reel in the water before. I mean, just crazy stuff happens. It's
like they just got upset and threw a reel in the water, or are you talking about on accident?
No, like he went to cast and I watched him cast and he just slung it out there and I see the topwater go flying and I look and there's a Shimano flying by it. I'm like, well, that's really interesting looking.
Open the bail.
I look up at him. He's just standing with his hands out. He's looking at his hands going, what the hell just happened? And I'm like, oh, there goes my combo. But, there's an hour and a half walking around the water trying to find it.
Did you find it?
Yeah, we found it.
Did he help?
No, he sat there. He sat there and pointed. I think it's over here. But
this looks like the water it fell in right here. Yeah, this looks just like it.
That discipline, being really smart thing. I realized after 30 minutes, 45 minutes of looking around that he was throwing a topwater plug. So we went and found the plug and traced it back to the rod, which his bail was open. So, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, so one of the things that we were also talking about earlier was just marine electronics and how you got into that, because that seems kind of unique. I don't know very many people who work in that field, but how did you end up getting into that?
That was it was actually a dumb idea on mine and one of my buddies' parts. Backstory on it is we had fished the Big Bend Classic. I think it's been 4 years now. And we went out after kingfish in a 24-foot Skeeter Bay boat. But I think we were roughly 54, 55 miles offshore in a bay boat, which is not your normal idea. But we ended up winning that year. We got the biggest kingfish, biggest fish in the tournament, and we'd entered the kingfish jackpot. So I think we ended up winning $6,000 cash and a $1,000 gift card to Bass Pro. So we really thought we were badasses.
You were living life.
Oh yeah.
What'd you spend the card on?
The Yamaha that you had to pull in the other day.
Yeah, $1,000 down payment on a gift card. That's pretty good use for it.
The gift card, no. I forget what the gift card went to. But the rest of the money went to the motor on the back of the boat. But we thought we were big dogs, this did real good. A couple of the guys came up and they're like, hey, I thought you were like a redfish tarpon dude. What are you doing out here kingfish fishing? And I was like, hey, I'm just a fisherman. Yeah. Well, a little cocky. They talked me into doing the kingfish shootout in August in Carabel. And we went out that day, and I'm probably overestimating a little bit, but running out of the East Cut beside St. George, there was a good 6 to 8 foot rollers coming through the cut, and we were still in the bay boat. So Brandon looks at me, I look at him, I was like, I don't know, man. He's like, dude, we got like $800 in fuel, hotel, slip. He's like, we got to go for it. All right. So he took 2 butt caps off the rods, filled them with tequila. We took a shot, and out we went.
There's a new use for that. I didn't realize that was a thing. So you got to hang out with you Wacola country boys to learn tips and tricks like that for being out here on the boat and everything. And with working with electronics, most people, maybe they do some research, talk to some friends, talk to some other guides, get online, look at some different specs on everything. And then it seems to me like a lot of times people, once they make up their mind, I'm Garmin or I'm Lowrance or whatever, they stick to it. But what are some things that you see on your end about that we could kind of take away and learn about electronics?
Mostly it's what the customer or what you want. I've had some guys who they use Humminbird and it's kind of familiarity. You're used to using Humminbird. The interface is the same. You like Humminbird. I've had guys who have gone from Lowrance to Garmin because it's an easier interface. They don't need all the bells and whistles. They just want something that tells them this is where you are. This is how deep it is. It might be able to link up to your trolling motor. It might not. So basically whatever your preference is. And sometimes there's no way to do it except for, find something in your price point and go with it. And if you don't like it, sell it and switch it out.
And so you work in, marine electronics, but you're also a guide. What do you have on your boat?
I'm running a Humminbird. I don't remember what number it is, but it's 6 years old. But for 99.9% of the stuff I do, it works just fine. I mean, I've caught snapper, grouper, cobia, kingfish, tarpon, redfish, trout, inshore, offshore. If you do the right things and get lucky, you can catch fish no matter what machine you have. But it's definitely helpful to use good equipment.
Yeah, and most of this equipment is outperforming the people that are using it nowadays. So you can, like you said, you can pretty much buy anything and get away with how much knowledge you know about it, or like we know about it. I know Chip on his boat, he's got side scan, and that just blows my mind seeing the images that come up on that. That's way over my head. But just the technology is definitely outrunning the user, I feel.
Oh, yeah. That's where there's the side scan, bottom scan. I've seen some, they have a 3D scan now. I forget which one it's called, but it actually has like a 3D picture. It shows the transom of the boat. And as you're going over it, it'll actually give you a 3D image of what's below the boat on the screen. So I think you can go overboard sometimes. If you got a 17-foot skiff and you got radar and side scan, bottom scan, you might not need all that. So really, most times when I get customers, I try to talk to them about the kind of fishing they do, what they need, and what their experiences with electronics are. So
if I'm wanting to do stuff in the flats, what are you going to tell me to look for? Just a good chart plotter so I can navigate that water? What's the thought process there?
Depending on what you're running, but usually just something to tell you where you're at, a good base map, and then get a chip. So, you got some of the oyster bars and channel markers. But a lot of times I try to suggest guys to do some kind of through-hole transducer. That way while you're running, you still can see bottom, because if you're in an unfamiliar area and you're running, like right now our water is dark, we've been out there running. I'm looking, I'm like, I know I'm in like 6-7 foot of water. And then next thing I know, my bottom machine is telling me I'm in 1.5 foot, 2 foot of water. And I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit off course. And if you're in an area you don't know and you're running, you won't be able to see the depth unless you have that right transducer.
Do they have the technology yet where you can have community marking on rocks? Like we were talking about some areas that get kind of hairy around here, but like, do they have that yet where I can be like, man, there's a rock right there, I'm going to go ahead and mark that, and then it pop up on yours?
They do. I wish I could tell you what company it was, but they do have they basically just call it like a sharing thing where you upload to like a cloud or to the internet all your information and it'll share with everybody else. And I wish I could remember what it was called though.
Because that would save some time. I'm sure we can look it up and put it in the show
apps.
notes.
Yeah, there's like Navionics and all those where you can use the paid service and then you get the communal chart plotting. And
I wonder how active people are on that. Like if I pay all this money, but is everybody else marking rocks on there? Is that going to give me some false confidence too? I mean,
Well, I mean, I might be that guy that goes to certain areas and I mark rocks every 5 yards,
yeah,
just to say you don't go
that's
over there.
John's spot.
Don't go over there. There's too many rocks.
Yeah, I'm going to say, man, that must be a good spot. Look at all that structure there. Yeah, get over there and figure it out.
Yeah.
And if I'm going like deep sea and I'm doing snapper or whatever, what type of rigs are you putting on boats for that?
Mostly just your traditional sonar works, but the side scan you were talking about, it does help a lot because I'm sure anybody who's ever gone offshore has done it. You know, you get your number and you go out to it, and sometimes you have to sit there and go back and forth and look for it. Maybe your number is a little off. Maybe your GPS isn't quite catching where you're at. So that side scan, you would actually be able to troll by where you're at and look left and right, and okay, it's 20 feet off to the left from where we're at now. So that would help. But the biggest, I guess you'd say, asset I have on my boat for offshore is my trolling motor. It's got the anchor lock on the Minn Kota. I don't even carry an anchor rope longer than 20 feet.
Wow.
That's just for anchoring up while we're fishing.
Yeah, that's a nice setup. And if you would have had that side scan technology, you probably could have found that rod and reel a lot faster. You could have side scanned it. That looks like one of the ads in the magazines where it's like it's got the details of every little nook and cranny of some pirate ship down on the ground or whatever you're fishing on. But yeah, and with thinking through just some of the electronic stuff, I mean, how much does that impact the way that you guide? Are you learning a lot and translating a lot into there, or is it usually kind of show up and do the work? And is there a lot of overlap there?
I more likely, I could say I've learned certain things that I don't want on my boat from seeing other people's boats. My boat's pretty basic. It's got the GPS, little radio, and trolling motor and power pole.
And just so we know, tell us about your boat setup.
It's a 98. It's a 17-foot master angler from Maverick. And the only thing original on the boat right now is the hull and the fuel tank. We've rewired it, replumbed it, which I'll get to that one in a little bit, I guess. But new motor, new electronics, everything on it. But like I said, it's pretty basic. Live well pump, bilge pump, fuse panel. It's basic.
Less things to go wrong.
Less things to go wrong. But I would suggest everybody, if you buy a used boat, go through it. I'd say a month and a half ago, I was running in from fishing and came down, landing there in Lanark and felt water come up and hit me in the back. Looked back, I had about a half inch of my transom sticking out of the water. The previous owner had replumbed the live well, and where the elbow on the plumbing came up, he had PVC pipe, and it wasn't threaded and it wasn't glued. So I just had a 90-degree elbow slick onto the pipe, and it was kind of rough that day, and it finally popped off, and the high-speed pickup was just throwing water in the boat.
Spraying water in the hole.
Yep.
And I'm guessing that you like guiding more than working in the electronic field.
Honestly, no, it's more enjoyable at times, but it's almost more stressful, if that makes sense. There's a lot more pressure in the guiding. The electronics, I have to get it right. Usually I'm on some kind of timeline, but I can do my own thing. If I pull the wire and it's the wrong color, I can pull it back out and put a new wire. If someone's, say we're fly fishing for tarpon, if I tell them to cast a little bit to the left and they need to go a little bit further to the right, then that's on me. There's no second chances,
And that's that whole pressure that guides feel. I mean, that's real. And that's coming from a lot from somebody who spent, several years in the back of a Humvee, serving overseas, to say, man, with guiding, there's a lot of pressure. Because that's not being dramatic, but what do you do to try to handle that pressure as a guide?
I don't know yet.
Tequila shots.
Figure it out and tell me.
Tequila shots off the butt of the rod.
No, I mean,
Or put it this way, like, what do you feel like makes a good guide?
that's a good question. I would think someone who is actually dedicated to their client success and enjoyment. But I've had old time guides, the guys that taught me how to guide. They say your job is to pick your client up on time, let them have some fun, and bring them back safe. If the fishing's fishing. If it cooperates like it should and you did your work, great. But that's where the pressure comes in, I think, is there are times where the fishing just isn't on point, and this person's paying a good bit of money and putting their time into you to basically put out and provide for them. Use your knowledge, use your off days where you went fishing by yourself, use that knowledge to put them on a fish. And there's some days it's just, it's fishing.
Yeah, it just doesn't work out.
No. I think those are not being they're few and far between these days, but it still happens sometimes.
And I think most people are pretty understandable about that, for the most part. What do you do when you got a difficult client in the boat? Is there any tips you got there for dealing with difficult clients?
One thing I would say is get them talking about something that they enjoy talking about so the time goes by faster. But honestly, I've had very, very few clients that were unruly. I've had a few guys drink too many beer. That one guy, fishing was a little slow, so he broke out a bottle of Jim Beam. He was lit by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, like fell off the boat kind of lit. So
Man.
that was a little difficult, but so as soon as he left, went home, I realized he left the Jim Beam in the boat, so that kind of took a little bit of the edge off.
Yeah, for sure.
A good tip.
Yeah, that was your tip. Yeah, here's half my Jim Beam handle here for you. It was a great day out here, if I can remember any of it. And but my dad had somebody tell him when he first started getting into guiding that the first time someone fishes with you, it's to catch fish, and then the second time somebody fishes with you, it's because they like you. To you, do you realize that you kind of enjoy that second or third or fourth time with somebody more than that first time?
I think that's where having repeat clients, they become, I think kind of like you guys said, they become more friends. You get a little more laid back. You start making dick jokes, you start talking about women, and then you start getting personal.
Yeah.
And then minus the fact that you still got to remember, they're still paying you for your time to put them on fish and do your job, but it takes a lot of the pressure off because it's more relaxed setting. But
Yeah, if they're not catching fish, you can take jabs at them.
oh yeah,
They're not doing the right thing. Yeah.
And they've been with you before,
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is really stressful, you have the fish cooperating, but then you got the weather, and you're trying to work around the weather. And, I even think about that tournament y'all were fishing, and it was just the weather wasn't cooperating real well. But, it's one of those challenges that a lot of guides face that really they have to be able to pivot and make changes and, be able to adapt. But I feel like when you develop that relationship with the client, you can kind of ease it up a little bit and be like, they understand, hey, this guy's going to do everything he can with all his knowledge and all the time he's put in to try to get me on a fish, and it's his boat and it's his gear and he spent a lot of time out here. But I think if you're fishing with somebody who, knows what they're doing, they're going to be kind of understanding too that the days where things don't cooperate.
that's what most guys recently, because like you talk about the weather, the end of this tarpon season got kind of rough with the rain and water clarity. And I had a few guys who were return clients from earlier in the summer, and they had really stellar days. Like this was one of the guys, it was his first day ever actually full fly fishing for tarpon the first day. And he fed a fish, but while I was yelling strip, he forgot the strip. He was like, well, I was waiting for him to pull. So he fed a fish, but didn't hook it. And then the second day he came out, he put 4 in the air. So those were his first 2 days this year, back in, I think it was like mid-June. Fast forward to the end of July, he came back with me, and he had one of those days where we were seeing fish, but they just weren't patterned like we thought they should or what I thought they should. And we were moving around a lot trying to get in front of him, and he had kind of a bad 2 days. But he was still, obviously, he was still cool because he came back again for 3 more days later that month. But that was kind of what you're getting at. I guess he was more fishing with a friend, and he kind of understood, okay, John knows what he's doing enough to put me on fish, but there are aspects that I can't control.
Especially with tarpon. If you could only fish one type of fish the rest of your life, would it be a tarpon?
I knew you were going to ask that. I think I'd probably stick with a redfish. Honestly, I love tarpon.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, they taste so much better out here. No, I don't know. I love tarpon. They drive me nuts some months or sometimes of the year, but I can do redfish year round. There's so many different ways you can target them. Live bait, artificials, fly, skinny water, deep water, near shore, offshore. There's just so many different ways to target them, and I do like to eat fish, so it's kind of cool to catch something you can take home to eat every now and then.
Yeah, I think the patience aspect is what does it for me. I rather spend 2 hours chasing down fish that I see than like 2 hours trying to figure out a pattern of fish that might be there. I think that's what it does it for me for redfish, is I can see them.
That's what I had the guide who taught me to tarpon fish. He told me it was tarpon fishing is hours of boredom, followed by moments of just sheer panic. And there's times that's what it is. You know, you're out there for an hour or 2 hours and you won't see a fish. Then all of a sudden a string of 6 will come by and you're sitting there picking your nose, fly rod's kind of hanging down, you know, flies hooked on a towel or something stupid, and there goes your 6 fish. They just swam right by because you're playing around, not paying attention.
Yeah, I've heard catching a tarpon on fly, like it being a success. I've heard it described as organized chaos. Like it is never not going to be chaos, but when it works, it's because it was organized chaos.
Well, that's what that same client, that was his goal this year, was to catch a tarpon. I tried to explain to him, like, look, this is your first year doing this. Like, if you can catch a tarpon, I'm damn proud of you, but there's so many steps that have to go into it. Once you see them, you have to do the cast, you have to do the right strip, you have to set the hook right. When they jump, you got about, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So he never caught one this summer. I think he ended up putting 14, 15 in the air maybe. Like, he did good for his first year, but like you said, it was chaos. Like, he'd hook a fish, it'd go in the air. Next thing you know, he's trying to grab a GoPro, strap on his GoPro while he's fighting a tarpon. I'm like, what the hell are you doing, man? Catch your fish and we'll get over it later.
And I could see a lot of clients, if they're not familiar with tarpon fishing, just being a little overwhelmed because maybe in their mind they're thinking kind of what you described about the St. Marks and some of the grass flats where, you know, I'm going out here in nature and you're tarpon fishing and there's some other guides around you and I've been out on the flat with you, and you know, it's not just organized chaos when you're trying to feed a fish, but, you know, there's other people out on the flat. You can hear their conversations. And, John, you have stories about people yelling at you. Man, you're the last guy. You're a big dude, former military. You're the last dude I'm going to yell at on a flat. But, I mean, that's a part of it. You know, that's a part of tarpon fishing is dealing with the carnival that can happen out there sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, there's our area especially, there's dudes from here, there's dudes from out of town, there's guys that can only go on the weekends, there's guys that take their vacation time to go through the week. I mean, there's different levels of etiquette. And like with Josh, when I first met Josh, I had no clue who he was. I realized where he was set up was kind of a little bit where I wanted to be, so we just kind of hung out back, and he's like, hey, if you want to come over here, come on over. Like, he was real cool about it. I would think that 99.9% of the dudes, if you pull up somewhere either you're not familiar with or maybe they're close by or where you want to be, if you're cool with people, they'll be cool with you. And that's always been my motto. Like, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, I've had one time I had to raise my voice at somebody, and that's because I got called a couple bad names, and that wasn't real cool. So
yeah, and then you have that story about being out. I guess you were red fishing during duck season, and for those of you that don't know, we have a lot of
that's just a bad idea.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know about the Panhandle, we have a lot of duck commanders up here that like to target redheads and
target
ringnecks,
anything that flies.
and
Drake Armada.
Yeah, the other beautiful Florida species of ducks, but it gets crowded out in certain areas. And I know you were talking about just you might be going out there to catch a redfish and have, you know, 10 or 12 boats pulled up in the grass, you know, with decoys out, and it can be kind of a circus out there. And you said you had a run in with some guys out there.
I've had several, but yeah, those guys were they were trying to race to get to a spot, and they ran wide open, probably within about 20 yards of me in a foot of water while I was pulling around looking for reds. But I've had those guys do it. I've been out there looking for reds and have people yelling at me from the grass line, hey, you're too effing close, man. You're scaring the ducks away. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And a couple words get exchanged, and I was a little bit younger, so I was like, hey, if you're a damn piece of, you know what, shotgun can even hit me out here, I'm too close. And a couple rounds went off, and I heard some pellets going, so I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I am a little too close. But
yeah, the only way I'm bad-mouthing John out on the flat is if I have a real fast boat. You know, that's my philosophy is I better get back to that landing because I don't want to meet him out on that landing. And I think everybody has that when it comes to tarpon fishing and just crowded spaces. One of the things about some of the guides I know down in Homosassa, they have radios, and you talk about that etiquette and that respect, and that's something that Jimmy Long on an earlier podcast talked about. But, you know, just having respect for each other and just realizing everybody's out here trying to make a living, or the guy that's out here on the weekend, you know, he's worked all week and he's finally getting to get out on the water. And I think everybody needs to pay respect to each other, but, you know, he's not less than a guide who gets the opportunity to go out there every single day.
Hell no. I've heard a bunch of different things over here, but like, it's water. You can't own the water. You can't own the spot. There's certain things, I think I've heard the exact words for, certain things you learn over your time on the water that kind of make what you know your
intellectual property.
Yeah, I think that's the word I heard before. That is true. But there's certain, like you said, the guys who were out there on the weekends. Like I said, when I met Josh, he was just recreational fishing, but he was where I wanted to be. I had no clue who he was. I was like, all right, that's his. He beat me here. It's his spot. Roll with it. If you know your craft well enough, and how you talked about earlier, having different plans like Plan B, Plan C. Like I pulled up spots before and gung ho at 6 a.m. I'm gonna get here. I'm first daylight, and I pull up and I see 2 other boats already sitting there. It's like, all right. You don't say nothing to the clients. You go, all right, guys, well, we got to change our plan a little bit, and you just kind of roll with it. It's my feelings and what I've experienced is if you show your ass too much in front of your clients, it kind of ruins their experience. So,
for sure, I could feel that. And I've been on the boat with Josh before, and we've been out there, and we're hanging out, and it's just me and him, and somebody that we know and that's been good to us and respect us pulls up, and we'll be like, hey, man, no, you can go ahead and hop up here. We're just hanging out. You got a client on the boat. We get that. But at the same time, if a guide starts to, want to get into a pissing match, and it's like, well, you got somebody on the boat paying and expecting something. I got a cooler on the boat filled with food, and no one's paying on our boat. We don't want to get into this match because I'll go home happy either way, And I think that's just something that I've learned, the respect part of guiding. I mean, even with you, I mean, I know you're a little bit younger of a guide than some of the other podcasts we've had, but I mean, you talked a lot about people who have mentored you. What did those relationships look like? What do they look like? And how did you get into them as a young guy?
Oh man. I'd probably say one of the biggest influential ones was Mike Locklear. He's the one that really introduced me to fly fishing and tarpon fishing. And I think he was being that old dude on Facebook looking at everybody else's fishing pictures and messaged me about going fishing. And I think I took him redfish fishing the first time. He's like, oh yeah, that was cool. We used to do this back in Homosassa because I think he was similar to Harry. Like he used to guide down the Keys. He guided in Homosassa. That's all he's ever done is guide. I think he had a real job, he said, for a couple months, and he quit. He hated it. But we went redfish fishing, and he was like, oh, let's show you something. And he took me out there tarpon fishing and completely ruined my summers for then on out.
And was there things that you did to try to position yourself, to try to, respect him and showed that you respected him, that put you in a situation where you felt like he wanted to invest in you some?
I think I probably asked too many questions. Like, even tying it into the guide and the electronic thing, as well as I think I know both my crafts, there's still days I come home and I'll read online and I'll do research and I'll call the actual companies and say, hey, look, this is what I'm working with. This is what I want to do. Do y'all recommend this? Is this okay? It's fishing, electrics. I like to say anything you do, it's your craft. If you ever think you need to quit learning or think you're, completely taught up, you're done. You're going to get past. So.
And I've noticed that even with some of the older guides that we've interviewed and spent some time around, that they're still learning. And it's just that respect thing. Like they'll learn from younger guys. And, we're hanging out and people are asking about websites and search engine optimization and some things that they don't fully understand. And they're telling us about things that we didn't even know we needed to know. They were answering questions that we didn't know we were supposed to ask. And I think that's one of the things I love about the outdoor community is that mentor kind of give back, pay it forward environment where, if you're fortunate enough, you have a father who passes some things along to you. But for a lot of guys, they don't have that. And so they go out and they're trying to learn. And I think that's one of the things too. Like I know when we go out and we're trying to learn, we just try to position ourselves in a place where we're not trying to get into some sort of altercation with a guide. We want to respect guides and learn from them. It's a big reason we have this podcast is we want to learn from each other. And I think that's something that's neat to hear about each guide talk about their mentor relationship and, down the road, what it looks like for them to pay it forward. I mean, what do you feel like makes a great mentor?
I would probably say a good mentor, besides being willing to give all their information, would maybe be to listen a little bit too. Because Mike, when I had questions, Mike would listen. And if I had an idea, I'd tell Mike, hey, look, have you ever tried this? Have you ever tried that? And he would tell me, yeah, it didn't work, or I did, but why don't you try it too? It's kind of, like you said, there's a give and a take, and there's just a respect for each other. Like, he wouldn't have probably taken the time to show me what he knew and introduce me to it if he didn't see that I was willing to, one, learn it, but that I had a little bit of knowledge of my own that maybe he didn't know about a little.
Absolutely. And when you think about that, what's the biggest change that you've made? Like, are there any big changes you've made since when you first started guiding where, you've made some shifts because of some things you've learned through mentors and just different experiences?
Different experiences, definitely. I learned if you're at the boat ramp 30 minutes for your clients, you're late because you're always going to forget something. Something's always going to be missing. You won't be able to find your pliers or something stupid. But I don't know, mostly the mentors is just like Mike, especially. He used to be called the hammer. He was a hammer on his clients. So they screwed up, he was a hammer. But he taught me that, tying into what we were talking about earlier, is the etiquette on the water. Like I said, the first time I met Josh, he was fishing in a spot, and me and another guy had pulled up, and we were fishing our spot, which is pretty close to his. Well, we shifted our position a little bit, and he looked up at us and goes, "Hey, I don't have a clue what I'm doing out here, guys. This is what I'm doing the same thing y'all are, but I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I'm in y'all's way." And I was cool about it. I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "Actually, you're kind of in the way," and I told him why, which we were looking for tarpon. I told him, "You're kind of in the way because this is the way the fish are going to swim." He said, "Okay." Well, he jumped back in line with us. Just, you couldn't tell the difference if you looked at our boats, besides he was by himself. And I think that was the day he put 3 in the air and landed his first one. So,
yeah, and that photo went viral because Josh is, and I love that photo of Josh. Josh been one of my best friends for a long time. He's a smiley dude, and he's leaning off the side of that boat, and 2 guys from Tarpon Trust are in the boat with him, and it's just about to capsize.
Yeah.
And John, he was so excited to get that video out there, or that photo out there, and a bunch of different people posted it, and everybody
he was excited
riding
about
him.
holding it, like holding the photo and like waiting a little bit before putting it out, and then it just was like everywhere, getting reposted.
But the thing they were talking about, if anybody's seen this photo, is that it looks like the boat's about to capsize. And Josh is so excited because he's got this fish in the picture, and all anybody's talking about is kind of cracking jokes at the boat. And he's got an awesome Hughes bonefish. I mean, it's an awesome boat, but it's a funny photo because it's pretty close to the edge. If that tarpon would have been a few pounds heavier, we might be fishing his boat for redfish, later in the year. So
I've seen it. That's what we actually hooked up to one fish and had a client, and he had a reel that wasn't up for tarpon. It was a freshwater. I think it was like a 9 weight, 10 weight. And we fought that fish for almost an hour and 15 minutes and finally pulled the hook. And by the time we came back, Josh had gotten all 3 of his. So
I'll tell you the thing about Josh, though, just a single dude in a boat, hooks the fish, throws the anchor line, motors around. I mean, if somebody's going to have all those things go right, it's going to be him. And I got the worst luck ever when it comes to weather.
Oh, man.
I mean, no one's fished with me the past year and not got rained on, yourself included being, I'm bad weather bug. But, I think about what you just said earlier where, you pick your client up, you have fun with them, and you get them back safe. And for me, I love to catch fish, but I love the people I fish with. And, there's some things that you could do as a guide that would just make me just not want to be on the boat, because I'm trying to relax and enjoy myself and have conversation. And I think there's a balance, and there's a lot of different guides have different styles, and some are hammers and some are friends, and everybody's different. And I'm not going to go and tell somebody the right or wrong way, but, everybody has their preferences. I mean, for you, how do you try to find that balance and trying to, hey, I'm going to shoot straight with this client. I want to get you on a fish, man. But at the same time, I don't want to make you feel bad and, tear you down either.
I think it's mostly in how I present ideas is what I would say. I had some actually favorite client from this summer, Don. He said when I hurt his feelings, I did it with a smile. So if I was like, Don, what the hell was that? Like, he casted a fish, and I was like, all right, start stripping it slow. And he picked it up and went to cast again. I was like, what the shit just happened? Like, what did you do, man?
But you said you like to present it in an idea like, hey, here's an idea.
Hey, here's an idea. Never do that again.
Yeah. How about you not take the bait out from in front of the fish 2 seconds before they hit it? But
it's just like, I think with any personal interaction you have with somebody, you got to kind of feel it out a little bit. I've had clients who come out with me, and I make a maybe borderline inappropriate joke, and I kind of gauge, okay, he didn't laugh, he didn't even turn around and look at me and smile. He just kind of kept doing his thing. All right, maybe we'll cut those jokes out. So you kind of feel out your clients, and there's sometimes people just don't jive together. I think what I would call my style is laid back, have a good time, and don't let them see how hard you're working or how hard you're stressing trying to make everything work out.
And you're a fun guy to be around, but definitely one of the things I like about you is you're not afraid to be yourself. And I think that's important too, because it's like you said, some people like it when you're a little rough with them, rough them up a little bit, tear them down. And some people I was thinking about a day that we were out there and there's a guy with you, and you could tell he was just relaxing and hanging out, and you got to be able to read that as a guide, but you also got to be true to yourself. And I think you do a great job at that. What's been some things that have been influential for you as a guide that have been helping? You talked about going home and reading, and are there any like books or blogs or just certain things that you feel like have been really shaping for you as a guide?
No, I mean, when I first moved into my house, Mike Locklear sent me 3 DVDs, and they were the Chasing Silver. It was Andy Mills and some of those other guys down the Keys, their tarpon series.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have internet, cable. I had the DVD player, and I had those 3 DVDs, and I think I had The Little Mermaid.
Did you have a phone at the time? Because I know you've been known to go through some phones.
You can crush some phones.
You're on your 3rd phone this season.
Fourth
phone
phone
this
season. So no, but I'd watch those repeatedly, and it's a TV show, so they're mostly for entertainment, but there's stuff you can pick up on, and then mostly just talking to other guides and what they're seeing. Other guys are just fishing too. I mean, I've got buddies who I would borderline say they're as good, if not better, fishermen than I am, but they don't guide. They don't have that they don't have that mindset. You know, they fish their way, and they've perfected it almost to an art. And that's their way, though. Like, if you try to take them and they try to teach it to someone else, they're not going to do it in 6 hours. So,
and Harry had a great thing in his podcast, and he was talking about Steve Huff, and he said everything that you need to be a great guide is 18 feet long and fits in your hands. And he was talking about a push-pull.
Oh, I was thinking something else. All right. I was like, damn.
Good clarification
Thank
there.
you.
But just time on the water, you know, that in a lot of the TV shows and stuff, I mean, one of the reasons we want to start this podcast is because we want to have some of these conversations that the TV shows a lot today, and I enjoy watching them, but, you know, it's all about the shot and the entertainment.
Yeah.
And I mean, man, some of those tarpon shows with the drones, you can see the fish, and I mean, it's incredible, right?
Yeah.
And you can learn some stuff for sure, but definitely paying your time on the water and interacting and being friendly with other guides. Is there anything that to you really you're wanting to work on the next few years as a guide?
Honestly, I'd probably say keep working on everything. I don't have anything. Like you said, I think I'm fun enough to be around the boat that you can stand it for a few hours, and I don't usually. There's moments I'll sit down and just rest my feet, but like, I'm not gonna be one of those dudes that pulls up to an oyster bar and say, here's a live shrimp. I'm gonna sit down and wait for you to catch something, kind of thing. So, but probably just keep working on everything. You know, work on my craft. You know, like I said earlier, you're never gonna perfect it. I don't think to the point where I feel like, okay, I've got it down. So just keep doing it. Everything I've been doing.
And I don't want to get too deep, but we're gonna go there. We're gonna venture into the depths where you're gonna need your hummingbird scanner and everything. But, you know, you're pretty young and you're guiding and you got a family and you're fishing. And when you kind of think about the future and you think about what success looks like for you, I mean, what are some things that come to mind?
I'll probably be overly wrinkled from the sun. Daughter will be healthy. I'll be happy. I mean, like I said earlier, I don't think it's one of those sports or careers that you can really get rich in. Fate lines up and you get the right gig. You know, I know there's guys who they are the sole captain for multi-millionaires. They get an annual salary. They get to use the client's boats anytime they want to guide out of. But whenever that client calls and says, hey, I'm coming down for 5 days, let's go fishing, that's your client for those 5 days, no matter what else you have going on. But I don't know. I'm happy with what I'm doing now. There's long days. Started at 5 yesterday. I don't think I laid down until 1:30 last night. Back up at 5 today. So long days, but I get to go to bed in my own bed every night. I'm not doing shift work. You know, I'm my own boss. If I screw something up or I don't deliver, that's on me.
Better than gunpowder.
Oh, much better than gunpowder.
And glasswork. But another fun question. I stole this from a podcast by a guy named Tim Ferriss, and he asked a lot of his people this, but if you could have a billboard put up and it could say one thing on it, what would you put on your billboard?
Damn, that's a hard question. Should have emailed me this one ahead of time so I had an idea.
You got a life motto or anything?
Probably something I would say my dad taught me. It was, don't sweat the small stuff, because in the end, when you look back, it's all going to seem like small stuff. So shit happens, all you can do is roll with it and keep going. You know, I've kind of feel like by now I've picked my path on what I want to do in life and have some kind of a general direction of which way I'm going. But if, you know, I have a bad day, fishing doesn't cooperate, or I wire up a boat and I get a call from a client the next day and hey, this won't turn on. It sucks, but you learn from it. You make it right and carry on, keep doing what you're doing.
Roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a 5-year journal, and you just write like one line every day, and I don't write it nearly every day. But the person that I'd heard talking about it said, look, if you do a 5-year journal and every day from each year stacks on top of each other, and you could write something in there that's just bothering you so bad. Oh, today I went out and my client threw the reel in the water and I couldn't put him on a fish, and you know, XYZ happened and I broke my phone, and
oh man,
you know, all phones. But all that stuff could happen. You're so ate up over it, and if had you not wrote it down, a year would go by and you'd forget it. And I think that gives some good perspective. Man, thanks so much for hanging out with us. If people want to follow you, and you are a fun follow on social media, what can they do?
I have my personals, Captain John Swanson, CAPT John Swanson. The North Florida Inshore is the charter site, and St. Mark's Pro Marine is the electric Instagram site. And then the charter is northfloridainshore.com for the website.
Well, we really appreciate it sitting down with us.
Yeah, I appreciate the pizza.
Yeah.
Pizza and beer. Always
Hey,
a good
man.
time, man.
That's all you have to say. I'll be there.
Thanks so much. Don't sweat the small stuff. Thanks for hanging out with us.
I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Captain's Collective. If you've enjoyed this podcast, it would really mean a lot if you just take some time to share it with some friends, throw it up on social media, or shoot out a few messages. For more information about the Captain's Collective, you can go to thecaptainscollective.com. Thank you for listening. We hope you have some great days on the water. We're out.